feel like we came of age as sports fans in this era of three-peats being this big thing. The Bulls, the Lakers, a team I know you love, the New York Yankees, all three-peating. But it actually hasn't happened at all since then. It's been a quarter century.
Yeah. And I think for the Chiefs, it comes down to the fact that we are watching two of the greatest to ever do it, not only in football, maybe of any sport, in head coach Andy Reid, in their quarterback Patrick Mahomes.
Let's talk about the Eagles for a minute, and their biggest star of the season, one of the breakout stars of the league as a whole, Saquon Barkley.
He came to the Eagles this past offseason after he was let go by the New York Giants. He was good with the Giants and they let him walk. Now he has joined the Eagles, which are a better team altogether, and he has been amazing. He's had one of the best seasons for a running back ever. Highlight after highlight in the regular season and in the playoffs. He is a threat at any moment to break loose for a long touchdown. And the Chiefs, all this past week in New Orleans, have been talking about just what a challenge he is. And so here is Chiefs defensive lineman Chris Jones talking about Saquon.
He can jump cut, he can outrun you, he can run you over. He got so many schematics to his game. There's just not no one thing he does. He's so athletic.
Obviously, that's a lot of compliments for one guy. And the reason is because he forces teams into a tough choice. You know, do you stack defenders up at the line of scrimmage? Do you sell out to try to stop him short? But then maybe you're opening yourself up to pass plays by having it kind of an emptier backfield. Or what if Saquon gets through that first level and then he runs free for a touchdown? That's a really hard choice for a team to make, and he's been making teams do it all season long, and that's why the Eagles are here.
Yeah, we need to talk about something else that has to do with the Eagles. We need to talk about the tush push.
Yes. This is a play that the Eagles really have become known for. They've been running it for a few years now, and it's their take on a play that, you know, you might normally call the quarterback sneak. Essentially, the quarterback is standing right behind the center, he takes the snap, and then he immediately jumps / sort of pushes forward as far as he can into what ends up being this like massive pile of football bodies. And you only see it in a situation in which you need like a yard, maybe 2 yards, but that happens several times a game, often like in key moments, like on a third down or right on the goal line, you're about to score a touchdown. And the Eagles have turned this play into an art. They're successful upwards of like 80 or 90% of the time. That is way higher than other teams. And so for the Chiefs, you know, I talked to defensive coaches, defensive players, and they said really they're not sure that they can stop it at all. And so the best defense for them is going to be to try to just not let the Eagles get into that situation at all, which I'll tell them good luck with that.
That's NPR's Becky Sullivan. Thanks a lot.
You're very welcome.
This is NPR News.
As a longtime lawmaker and House Speaker, Tina Kotek made a name for herself as something of a climate warrior. But since becoming governor, Kotek has been focused on a narrower set of issues: housing, schools, and behavioral health. I'm Dirk Vanderhart. On this week's OPB Politics Now, we take a look at Kotek's climate legacy 2 years into her first term and why some worry she's lost focus. Find the show wherever you get your podcasts.
And you can find all of the news and headlines that we're following, including updates throughout the day, at opb.org. Coming up, we're going to speak with Matthew Medler of the Cornell Lab of Ornithology about the best bird sounds of 2025 from their vast collection of recordings and why their selections made the list. That's in about 15 minutes here on OPB. Tonight in the Willamette Valley, mostly cloudy with a low near 31. Tomorrow, we'll see a partly sunny day with a high near 42.
I'm Janine Herbst with these headlines. The Palestinian militant group Hamas released 3 more hostages today, and Israel, in return, released more than 180 Palestinian prisoners and detainees, all part of the 6-week ceasefire agreement. Hamas is still holding some 76 civilians and soldiers. Recovery efforts are underway in western Alaska after a commuter plane with 10 people on board crashed this week, going down in the Bering Sea on a flight to Nome. There were no survivors, and there's no word on a cause. And a more than 300-year-old Stradivarius violin was sold at auction in New York for more than $11 million. It was sold by the New England Conservatory in Boston, which will use the proceeds to fund student scholarships. I'm Janine Herbst, NPR News. Support for NPR comes from the station And from ARM, on the latest episode of Tech Unheard, ARM CEO Renee Haas talks to Christopher Miller, author of Chip War, about how tech is helping to shape the future of computing. Available on all podcast platforms. From the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation, for nearly a century, supporting efforts to promote a just, equitable, and sustainable society. More at mott.org. And from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation at macfound.org.
It's All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Scott Detrow. There is something wrong with the plumbing in Cincinnati. Billions of gallons of raw sewage end up in the waterways each year. And for some people in the city, that raw sewage gets a lot closer to home, like inside their actual homes. From Cincinnati Public Radio comes the podcast Backed Up. Host Becca Costello, producer Ella Rowan dive deep into one of the most complex parts of our infrastructure.
We're talking about the sewers. For most of us, once we flush the toilet, it's someone else's problem.
That is, until whatever you flushed comes back up.
This is the first big mystery. Sewage ends up in places it doesn't belong way more than it should, in Cincinnati and lots of other cities. So why?
Should we bring in the bulletin board?
Let's do it.
Alright, so if movies and TV have taught me anything about mystery solving, it's that we need to put all of our evidence on a bulletin board.
Imagine a dark, windowless room. A cluttered table sits beneath a flickering bare light bulb. Ella is pouring herself a 10th cup of coffee while I pin newspaper clippings and suspect photos to the bulletin board.
We connect the dots with red yarn, trying to decode dozens of sewer-related acronyms.
EPA,
CSO, MSD.
CCF,
MSD.
SBA,
FEMA.
Okay, so here's what we know. I'm putting up a map of Cincinnati, right on the Ohio River. That's where we live.
So the sewer system is run by the Metropolitan Sewer District of Greater Cincinnati. And going forward, we're just going to say MSD instead of all of that. MSD also covers most of Hamilton County.
MSD is a wastewater utility. They collect dirty sewage, like what goes down the toilet, industrial waste, like what comes from factories, and a lot of stormwater. That comes from clouds.
They treat it, then release it, squeaky clean, back into waterways like the Mill Creek and the Ohio River. Here's how they describe their work.
The Metropolitan Sewer District of Greater Cincinnati maintains more than 3,000 miles of public sewer. On a typical dry weather day, wastewater from our homes, businesses, and schools flows through the public sewer without problem to one of MSD's 7 major wastewater treatment plants. But what happens when it rains?
When it rains, the system can't handle the sudden influx of stormwater.
When it rains harder, even more stormwater can enter the sewers, which can cause the system to become overwhelmed with more flow than it can carry.
Overwhelmed with more flow than it can carry. That means when it rains a lot, all at once, untreated sewage gets backed up.
Hey, that's the name of the show.
Through pipes into people's basements. This is called a sewer backup, or SBU.
Sewer backups.
Right.